Excuse me for getting so close to the camera. Sorry. Tell or ask me anything in the chat. My name is Don Benitez, and I've been streaming daily since September 2nd of this year. Today is November 1st. Tell or ask me anything in the chat. Jacqueline says you're back. Happy emoji. Yes, I'm back. Hello, Jacqueline again. Tell or ask me anything in the chat. Tell or ask me anything in the chat. Jacqueline says the crowd before was wild. I mean, I think the last stream was like an average viewer count, like average views. Joe says back on the toilet. Are you on the toilet? Is that what you're saying? Tell or ask me anything on the chat. Tell or ask me anything in the chat. Jacqueline says, nah, I mean the comments they were making. Yeah, the comments last stream were crazy. Tell or ask me anything in the chat. Joe says, how are you doing today? Any plans? I'm starting the renovations today in the 5th room. I have nothing exciting planned. That sounds cool. You're renovating somewhere. That's cool. Mr. says, bro, your ass is nice. Okay. Tell or ask me anything in the chat. Tell or ask me anything at all in the chat. She says black or nah. What do you mean? Glenn says, what an absolute legend. Thank you. Babty says hi. Hello, Babty. Mr. says, bro, where are you from? North America. Dororo says, are you happy? Yes. Not Gentleman says, what the fuck is this? I stream myself reading whatever comments I get. William says, constantly responding to people's stupid posts will probably give you mental problems. Be careful. I don't think so. I don't think doing this is any different than like watching random videos on the internet. Tommy says, I'm horny. Any advice? Get a partner. Marry. Olin says, I just farted. Okay. Wuzzy says, pound sign emoji, book emoji, black old man emoji. Okay. Marcella says, I like how you read everyone's comments. I try to. Joe says, do you think aliens built the pyramids? No. Ruka says, you look like Charlie Kirk from Ohio. Okay. Cram says, I'm mental problems. Do you have mental problems? I don't know. Termant says, is gooning bad or good? Bad. Dororo says, can you fly? No. Arkiviran says, I'm so horny right now. Any advice on what to do to women? Intercourse. Gentleman says, are you sure? Sure what? N-word says, do you think space is endless? From what I heard, basically. Cram says, so you just read comments? Yes. CS says, Jew? No. D says, looking gay today? Okay. Titan says, bro, you're still up? I am. Chi says, what type of gay do you like? I'm not gay. CS says, Jew? I don't believe in you, Cub, I'm sorry. Blue Chill says, yo, what's up? Hello, Blue Chill. 3D says, giraffes don't vomit. They would choke before it comes up. They have 7 stomachs that they vomit into. They vomit into another stomach of theirs. Interesting. Virus says, bro, remember me? I don't. Sorry. Bombser says, you're so zesty. I'm zesty? Okay. It's Gabriel says, Don, you remember me, Don? Donnie boy? No. If you want me to remember you, try to make your username unique and your profile picture unique. Ruka says, are you a psycho? No, I have emotions. Rosie says, get a life. I am alive. Andy says, Crocs or flip-flops? Flip-flops, if I had to choose. Pharmaceutical says, hey baby. Hello, Farm. Big Mac says, I love you. I like you too. I like Big Macs a lot. Alejandro says, brother, you just said you're gay? I did? Okay. Gabriel says, I terrorized you yesterday. You broke my heart. Sorry again. Vaish says, looking pink today? I look pink? Okay. Make It says, Dexter Morgan? Nope, I'm not a serial killer. Sankey says, that's only a face a mother could love, and even then, maybe not. Okay. Binkin says, can you throw it in a circle freaky style? No. 3D says, tiger stripes are not just on their fur, their skin is striped too. Cool. Arkevian says, why are you so gay? Why is my demeanor the way it is? My personality. Wesley says, this guy trips me out. Okay. Aaron says, why your pussy so clean, no hair? I have a pussy. Okay. Doro says, why Mariah Carey cry? I don't know why she has ever... I don't know why, like, what you're talking about. Left Erie says, bro, don't listen to the haters. You're a good guy. Thanks. Rosie says, get a job. Okay. Not Gentleman says, why are you gay? I'm not gay. It's Gabriel says, Don, what's the time there, Donald? It's still dark out, I'll say that. Double D says, okay. Ruka says, why are you freaking ignoring me? I asked something. I'm not ignoring you in particular. Alejandro says, bro, we look alike for real. Cool. Tora says, a shirt over your polo? Yeah. DJ says, nice hair, man. Thank you. Drowning says, keep it up, lad. I will. Jay says, that's a smashing shirt, bruh. You like it? Thanks. Some Plays says, hello. Hello, Some. Alejandro says, why you sound like AI? I don't know. Drip says, why you ignoring me, man? I'm not. Tyler says, porking it right now? Does that mean masturbating? Muffle says, he's a serial killer, guys. Nothing going on behind them eyes. I'm not a serial killer. R says, how many bodies do you have? I haven't killed anyone. Wesley says, is this guy a robot? Nope. Titan says, I'm going to sleep. Good night, honey. Good night, Titan. Gumball says, nice outfit you got there. Thank you. Young says, that off stare glance was kinda hard not to believe. What? Thrift and Things says, have you been to jail? No. The Best Fortnite Player says, love your stream. Thank you. Tyler says, what kind of autism is this? I don't know, you tell me. Double D says, Jaden Kallage at all times, brother. Salute emoji. What? Game says, hope you're doing well. I am, thanks. N-word says, have you heard of AI Saberism or the Kybalion? I've read the Kybalion, like, it's about like these 7 laws or something. Not Gentleman says, so cute, gay stream. You're into cute gay streams? Okay. Double D says, I'm swinging the porker around 24/7. That sounds unhealthy. Thrift and Things says, when is the last time you choked the chicken? No comment. Rosie says, what country are you in? A country in North America. Jonathan says, you need happy drugs? I'm good, no thanks. It's Gabriel says, Donatello, do you know someone named Leonardo, Raphael, and Michelangelo? I'm not a Ninja Turtle. Robert says, seriously, why is the ceiling fan Mach 4? I don't know why it's going so fast. Mahin says, yo, bro, smile. I will soon. Nia says hi. Hello, Nia. Varesh says, say my name. There you go. 3D says, Mary Ann or Ginger? What? Double D says, what? That's the whole reason why I'm here. What? Vase says, oil up, buddy. No. Michael K says, give Sal his sweater back. It's not Xmas yet. I bought this. I own this. Victory A says, Jesus died for you. I don't believe in Jesus, but thank you. Ruka says, how old are you? I'm an adult. I don't say my specific age. Nihon says, Peter picked a pickle pea pampa rum. Okay. Eagle says, babe, reply me. There you go. Shapeshifting says, hello, Don. My pibble. I'm gonna wash your belly. I don't want that. Gentleman says, do you like Cannibal Pork songs? I don't know that musician. It's Gabriel says, hey, Donald, if he were the last person on Earth and the other person was a male and female hybrid, would you repopulate? I mean, I guess it would be my duty as much VY says, are you a vampire? No. King says, support your local sexual assaulter? No, why would you do that? DJ says, do you like Trump? No comment. Wesley says, your monotone is wild, yo. I'm so monotone that it's crazy. Okay. Daisy says, what's your job? I'm gonna keep that private. The Pac-Man says, can I get a loan? No. Double D says, female hybrids can't reproduce. You can't fool me. Okay. Nahan says, sometimes I like to think I'm special. Then I watch things like this, and I see something real special. Thanks for the words, bro. I make you feel not crazy and dumb. Okay. 3D says, are you concerned that AI will steal your likeness and voice in the future? I mean, I think it's inevitable, so I don't really think about it. Shapeshifting says, hello Don, my pibble. I'm gonna wash your belly. Don't wash my belly. I don't want that. It's Gabriel says, Don, what the fuck is this slow mode? I want to spam. I don't like spam. Ernest says, show us your debit card info. No, then all of my money would drain really fast. Radiant says, say, I like cops without touching your lips. I don't like... I'm straight though, so why should I do that? It's Gabriel says, I'm gumping it right now. I'm gumping it. Water squirting emoji. Okay. Madness says, you are 36. Maybe. Thrift and Things says, I love your smile and your lips, bro. Okay. Wesley says, this dude is underrated for sure. Thanks. Adam says, it's you again. We meet again. Hello, Adam. Daisy says, do you want to be an actor? No, that doesn't interest me. Ark says, where the fuck is the car? What car? Just a Dude says, do you have a Patreon? I don't. Shapeshifting says, is blackface for Halloween any good? No, that's racist. It's Gabriel says, Donaldo, I love you. Thank you. Vaish says, what color is that wall behind you? Tan. Geese says, this guy has the personality of a date rapist. Well, I don't rape people, so that's good. Ernest says, show us your restraining orders. Nobody's put one of those on me. Grading says, it's all fake, it's AI. I'm AI. Okay. F-Bomb says, you're looking fancy. Yeah, I've got something going on, definitely. Jamie says, damn, people are mean. Yeah, when people are given, like, an anonymous outlet, they become crazy. Iana says, I'm back. Hello, Iana. Vaish says, why you have a red eye? I think it might legitimately be because I forget to blink when I'm reading the chat. Double D says, he's got a girl, guys. Maybe. Kiki says, hi, Dad. Hello, Kiki. Thrift and Thing says, do you remember me, Don? I've been following you for years, man. I don't think you've been following me for years. Let Go says, is a pig's pussy pork? I guess. Space says, blink twice while reading this. Thank you. DJ says, too many people in the world. So yes, we are all going crazy. You think overpopulation is making us crazy? Okay. Maverick says, Benitez, were your ancestors the blanket givers? What? What's that? Cruz says, do you like fishing? No. Wesley says, paranoid schizophrenic. These chats I'm seeing on this screen over here, that's real, right? This is not just in my head, right? Gumball says, bye, Don. I will be back in December. See you next month. That'll be cool if you actually come back in December and, like, in between you don't see anything at all. That would be cool. Bad Bunny says, I really like this cute guy. Okay. Autumn says, Don Benitez is being canceled for liking 6-year-old girls. No, I'm not. Chris Watts says, are you a substitute teacher? No. Classical says, you're adding more dialogue. Yeah, my master has programmed more voice lines into me. King says, blanket givers were the British colonists. Okay. Vaish says, you look like Sam Worthington. Okay. Shapeshifting says, I love you. Thank you. Iana says, take a nap. I'll be going to sleep soon. DJ says, UK all the way. You like the United Kingdom? Okay. Z says, are you straight? Yes. Landscaping says, hi. Hello, landscaping. SJ says, get them told. Okay. Alex says, hello, sir. Are you autistic? No. Autumn says, you look like the Temu version of Jenna Ortega. Okay. Gabriel says, yo, Donald, do you ever scratch your balls and take a sniff? No. F-Bomb says, I want a portrait of landscape. Is that like a camera joke? Joel says, what does your shirt mean? I like it. It's a YouTuber's merchandise. Sal C1. That's the name of the guy. Sal C1. Julian says, do you have the Huzz? Maybe. Thrift and Things says, keep talking, Don. I'm almost finished. I mean, I'll keep talking, not because of that. Jacqueline says, you're opening up. Maybe slightly. I don't know. Tyler says, your phone has been randomly selected for a cash prize of $5 million in our 2016 Promotion Prize Award. Do not redeem. Kirsty says, do you like chips? Yeah. MJ says, yo, Don, I'm back for another one. Hello, MJ. Vaish says, I don't like you. Well, I say fuck you. Okay. Iana says, do you know me? Yes, I do. You're the I'm back person. Ernest says, sending you backwashed tap water from Ohio. I decline. Big Plenus says, damn, Don, how long will you be streaming. I mean, I stream a lot. How long this stream is gonna be, I keep that a mystery. Gon says, "You're back, Don?" Yeah, I'm back. Roadman says, "Poor boy, you shit, you silly boy." What? The Pac-Man says, "Are you locked in a room against your will because you know too much?" I mean, if I knew too much, I would be quiet about it. Corey says, "What is the point in this chat/stream?" I mean, there's no point. There's no meaningful purpose, at least. Thrift says, "Have you ever ate ass after someone using the bathroom to take a shit?" No. Daniel says, "What about the new channel?" I mean, to be honest, I think this YouTube channel is the only YouTube channel I care about, and I'll be streaming here for the months to come. King says, "Do you know how to cook?" Yeah. Eugene says, "Do you play The Last of Us or Five Nights at Freddy's?" No. Corey says, "I like your honesty, man." Handshake emoji. Thank you. Budget says, "Who's ready for no EBT November?" What? R says, "Are you leaving?" No, I'm staying on this channel, if that's what you're talking about. Long says, "Do you ever sleep?" Yes, I'm a human that's alive, so I sleep, yeah. Vaish says, "This guy is studying us." I think it's the opposite. Dustin says, "Do you know gay porn?" Yeah, I know of that. Caramel says, "Bro, you look like Bang Chan from Stray Kids." Okay. Iana says, "You started at 3:53 and it's 7:43 p.m. So you've been streaming for 4 hours?" There was a break in between. Technically there were 2 streams. Gabriel says, "You gonna do a 2 steps ahead on us all? Like that mukbang guy?" No. Johnny says, "I'm a human that's alive." "I'm a human that's alive" is exactly what an alien would say. I mean, a human could also say that. Thrift and Thing says, "Have you ever played the skin flute?" The penis? Someone else's penis? No. And F says, "Do you recycle?" I used to, but not anymore, unfortunately. Sorry. Him and Ashley says, "Why are you still here?" That's a good question. Hetzy says, "Do you have a job?" Possibly. Bashir says, "Do you like your salad toasted?" I don't eat salad. Jamie says, "Do you like chess?" It's a boring game, but it is cool, but it's just boring. NF says, "Please put your hand in the fan." No, that would hurt a lot. Jack says, "Seriously, bro, you look 5.5, 150. What if I 6.5, 220? You're just saying straight nonsense." Eugene says, "Mean people are motherfuckers these days." Okay. Fit says, "But wait, how would I know whether it should be a cosine or a sine?" I forgot geometry. Shapeshifting says, "Shapeshifting just busted himself on themselves." Okay. Max says, all stems from jealousy. Maybe. Gabriel says, Dawn, I know it's pink. I don't have a vagina. Rose Girl says, have you ever ate ass? No. That's not a question I would expect from someone named Rose Girl for some reason. Thrifton Thing says, have you ever fit a foreign object in your anus? No. King says, do you know how to speak German? I don't. So says, what's your favorite video game? Red Dead 1. Himanashu says, are you deleting this channel? No, I changed my mind. Sorry for being confusing about that. Jose says, play the skin flute, Donatello Benitez Jr. No, I'm not gay. Jamie says, what kind of questions would you like to be asked? Surprise me. Vaish says, what degree you have, sir? Not gonna say. J-Man says, you're back on chat. Haha, so how's it going, man? Good, thanks. Stream is going well. BN says, remember me? Sorry, no. Jose says, call 911 Don Benitez. Don Benitez is with MS-13. Call 911 on me because I'm a part of MS-13. That's fake. Luke says, are you a member of the KKK? I am neither a part of the KKK. Team says, what has 4 legs, going up a mountain, but also going down? I don't know. R says, oranges are orange? Yes. Quentin says, do you ever feel it tickling in your butt when you poop? I don't want to think about that. Big says, Dawn, wake up, you're in a coma. Things seem real. I think this is real life. Vince says, Dawn, you good, you look and sound like you're gonna cry. This is how I always am. 3D says, I'm dating a stripper and it's beautiful. Okay. Shapeshifting says, go on HRT. What does HRT do? I don't know what it does. Hetzy says, if you could give one piece of advice to every person on this planet, what would it be? I don't know. Ernest says, do you moan when you wipe? No. Jamie says, it's testosterone, I believe. Okay. Denzel says, HRT equals hormone replacement therapy. Hormone replacement therapy. Okay. Fred says, live long and prosper. Yeah. Max says, do you wipe when you moan? I already said yes. I mean, no. I already responded to you, but I said no. Mr. Harris says, what's your name? Don Benitez. Jose says, Don Benitez is wanted in 5 countries and 49 states. I'm not. Raphael says, how much do you bench press? I don't go to the gym. DJ says, you got him that one, huh? Yeah, that guy got me. Like, I accidentally said yes, he got me. Shapeshifting says, go on HRT. Cool transgender pills for unusual people. I don't plan on becoming transgender, so why? I don't think I want it. Hetzi says, are you happy with your life? Yes. Luke says, Ayo, you sus as hell when he said yeah when you moaned. I accidentally said yes. Quentin says, why do I genuinely feel excitement in my pants when you answer my question? I don't know. I guess you like the attention. The animation says, can you wipe your ass with both hands? I guess you can if you wanted to. Muntaha says, hi, bro. Hello, Muntaha. Big Plenus says, accidentally said yes. Are you suspicious that, like, I accidentally told the truth? That's not what happened. Random Stuff says, how old are you? I'm an adult. That's all I will say. Luke Wright says, I was about to hide on the blanket when you said that. Okay. Lady says, nope, tried it. You can only use one hand. Okay. Instinct says, hey Don, do you hate Diddy? I mean, I heard he did some terrible stuff, so I guess I don't like him. Chip Tree says, any goals for the month of November? Any goals for this month to get monetized? I think monetizing my channel will ruin my channel a little bit, but just a little bit. The Pac-Man says, do you study anything interesting? No, I'm not. Instinct says, I like you, Don. Thank you. Gone says, good night, Don. Good night, Gone. Shapeshifting says, Sean Combs is my father. Sorry to hear. No offense. If somehow he really is, even though there's no chance in hell. Vay says, tell something that fascinates you. What fascinates me? Eyes Wide Shut. Chiptree says, I like the stream for real, if you want to. Michael says, let's stop this facade. You're easily a gobbler of gentleman's relish. Of penis? No. Loth says, what advice would you give to someone who loves your videos but has autism? I don't know what advice I would give to specifically autistic people. Just a Dude says, are you a Roblox character trapped in 2B2T? That's a way to put it. Yeah. Ark says, you're so good at talking, it made me pour my cum on the phone. Okay. Armorist says, I like the fit, bro. Good. Looks handsome. Thank you. Radiant says, who's better, Diddy or Fleece Johnson? I don't know who Fleece Johnson is, but if he doesn't assault people, then Fleece Johnson. Math says, play guitar? No. Ernest says, why is your keyboard sticky? It's not sticky. Bleeding says, what brings you here, mate? For fun and possibly money in the future. Kelt says, when are you sleeping? What's my sleep schedule? That's private. 3D says, if you were 1 inch deep in Hillary Clinton and Trump was 1 inch deep in you, would you go forwards or backwards? I don't want to think about that. I'll cross that bridge if I get there. Michael says, what is your favorite genetic material? No comment. Chiptree says, what are your thoughts on students using AI for help on their homework? That seems bad. It makes it where you don't need to put effort into it. But I mean, if you actually learn from the AI, I guess that's good. Thrift says, do you have a hairy ass or are you smooth? No comment. Captain One says, why won't you share the oats? Why won't I share my oats? Because I love gluttony. Erna says, do you have a Playboy magazine in Braille? I don't. Isn't that a real thing somehow? 3D says laughing emoji. Okay. Math says, so what is your channel? Literally just this, just me reading messages. Lance says, hey bro, remember me? Your outfit looks good today. Sorry, I don't. Quentin says, do you giggle when you wipe your butt? No. Lady A says, which came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know. Raphael says, Don, how do I get a small cylindrical object out of an M&M tube without damaging the cylinder? Huh. You're talking about your penis. Tokyo says, I like Tokyo. Okay. Chris Watts says, can you defeat Brock Lesnar? Is that a boxer? Probably not. Long says, how tall are you? 5'7". Ludog says, what's your most common legitimate topic you talk about on here? I mean, the chat changes so fast topic to topic, so I don't know how to answer that. The animation says, can you take a fat dump in front of us? You want me to defecate on stream? No, that's really gross. Vaish says, do you fancy woman? No. You wrote, do you fancy woman? No, so that it would make me seem like I'm answering no. One says, Rob Johnson trying to smash, caught red-handed, bro. What? Travis says, I peed at the bed this morning, just a little though. Okay. Quentin says, when are you gonna start making YouTube? What do you mean? Captain One says, do you change the thumbnails of every VOD to you smiling to seem more appealing? Are you recommending I change my thumbnails? Zapimba says, what do you think is inside a black hole? I heard that it's nothing. 1R3 says, serial killer? You wouldn't admit it to us anyways. I guess a serial killer wouldn't. Vince says, do you sometimes smell your poop a little when you defecate? Or do you flush it immediately? What? Ernest says, did you send my mom pics of yourself wearing dress? I didn't. Thrift says, Dawn, if I have a micro weenus, how would I make it bigger? Pump, pills, surgery? I heard jelqing was fake, so I guess surgery. And pills are definitely notoriously fake. Lady A says flush as you go. Interesting. Cool Kid says, what's your dream occupation? I don't have one. Fate says, you look like you could play a new gen Edward from Twilight. Okay. Math says, bro, please seek mental health. I think I'm fine. Jose says, Don, would you do something strange for a piece of change? Would I do something sexual for money? No. Big Plena says, if you were a woman for a day, what would you do? I really don't know. Kelt says, could a girl ride your back while you climb trees? No, I'm not a vampire like Edward. Robin says, can I slap your butt cheeks with oil? No. Robert says, do you beat off to your sexy neighbor? Nope. Chip Tree says, have you completed any books this year? Possibly, but I can't remember them. Probably not. Grow Some Garden says, do you eat your shit? No, that's really gross. Quentin says, Dawn, I need to take a piss. Can you please wait? No, I'm gonna keep talking. Sorry. MF Doom says, Jesus died on the cross for you and everyone. Thanks, but I don't believe in Jesus. 100 says 95% of topics are about his serial tendencies and his closeted sexual preferences. It kind of seems like that. Zipimba says, are you alone? In this room, I'm alone. Vince says, I'm currently jelking it to your stream. Okay. Randy says, if you could kiss any gay celebrity, who would it be and why? Alan Cumming for his part in Eyes Wide Shut. The animation says, I wouldn't do that voluntarily. Jason says, are you doing this every night because you lost a bet? No, I think this is fun. Tribo says, do you believe in demons? No. Warmonger says, what do you play on, console or PC? Present day, PC. King says, do you like to sit on 12-inch BBCs? No. Thrift says, Don, can you show us a glimpse of your manifesto? I'm not writing a manifesto. Mike says, I'm sitting on the toilet watching you, slightly constipated. I hope you get better. Kelt says, does your family know you are in your room doing this? Possibly. Spooky says, do you like to have your skin being worn? Happy emoji, rainbow emoji, unicorn emoji. No. Simon says, did you kill your pets? No. I'm not on track to become a killer. Ernest says, why do you eat your own spunk? I don't eat my own ejaculate. Misty says, listen, will you ask these fuckers ask a question I dare them to? You want them to ask like a real normal question? Is that what you're saying? Randy says, Dawn is awesome. Thank you. Luke Wright says, I hope you don't shit yourself, Mikey. The guy that's constipated, you're hoping he doesn't defecate? Rude. Fading Star says, do you ever sleep? Yes. Jonathan says, Dawn loves butt stuff. No, I don't. Morale says, why do you look so sad? My personality. Quentin says, do you get excitement answering freaky questions? Do I like freaky questions? I mean, I don't really like them, but at the same time, they're entertaining. IXN says, ooh, very scary. Okay. Open Ocean says, what came first, time itself or space itself? Time. Just guessing. Jacqueline says, if you had one wish, what would you ask for? I'm not sure, but it would definitely be something about, like, it would affect all people. I would want to, try to improve the world, not, like, ask for $1 billion or something. Vaish says, I think you should talk a bit more instead of simply reading off the comments. Yeah, I've thought about that, maybe, but I like reading comments. Redneck says, do you ever show emotions? Sometimes. Fading Star says, what is the square root of 81? 9. Robert says, do you like smelling your own fart? No. Jason says, Don, this was a great idea. It's actually really funny most of the time. Thank you. $100 says, my sphincter tightens every time you respond with okay. All right. Jade says, hey. Hello, Jade. Alan says, red pill or blue pill? Blue pill. Lala says, are you straight? Yes. Mr. says, Simon, put your hands up. I'm not putting my hands up. Dirty says, you're such an inspiration to other trans men everywhere. I am? That's bizarre. Quentin says, what came first, the chicken or me when I first saw your stream? Huh? Okay. Morale says, how tall are you? 5'7". Ernest says, the butt plugs you ordered from Amazon will arrive in 7 days. I didn't order that. King Julian says, is it gay if I base my mushroom tip with moisturizer and direct it into my mate's bung? I mean, I guess if your mate is a guy, yeah. Lou says, do you have any interesting areas of interest or expertise worth talking about? I mean, I just like answering questions. Mr. says, definitely gay. I'm definitely gay. Okay. Robert says, do you like wearing women's panties? No. Vaish says, how much would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? I don't know. Spooky says, can you let me out of the basement? You're not in my basement. Mister says, so you like questions? In the context of streaming, yes. Murao says, do you have a girlfriend? No comment. 3D says, Sarah sells seashells by the seashore. You're following up the woodchuck comment, huh? King Julian says, on the 12th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me one shining dildo to go on top of the Christmas tree. I would never put that on a Christmas tree. Misty says June. June, like the month? Okay. Grasshopper says, I have explosive diarrhea. Sorry to hear that. Michael says, hello again. Will you be vacationing in Pound Town, Pennsylvania? No. Quentin says, I liked your stream with my tip. With the tip of your penis? That's really strange. Thrift and Things says, what does spunk taste like? Is it delicious? I wouldn't know. Benny says, son, I love you. I don't know who you are. Cool Kid says, what's your top 3 video games? Well, one of them is Red Dead Redemption 1. Billy the Jit says, to do the truffle shuffle. What's the truffle shuffle? Danny says, you're a cool guy, man. I'm a cool guy, thank you. JK says, Donnie boy, do it be squirtin' and fartin'? I don't have a vagina. Spooky says, you look like you're pregnant. I haven't been told that before. Simon says, did your uncle molest you? No. Murao says, say 6'7". There you go. Jonathan says, Don is a closet gooner. No. Aaron says, holy fuck, I'm dead. You're laughing really hard. Nice. Caleb says, have you ever heard of Turd Ferguson? No. Oscar says, today is my birthday. Happy birthday, Oscar. Robert says, how often do you beat yourself? I don't hurt myself. Jonathan says, yes, Donnie boy, yes. Okay. Trip says, butt wrangling booty bandit. Okay. GPT says, Don, why do you seem angry? I'm not angry. Apesh says, are we related? Are you saying we look alike? Kelt says, are you loud in bed? No comment. Lou says, I feel like this is just a bunch of 12-year-olds somewhere on the other side of the world. Maybe. Alicia says, never been in bed. You've never been in a bed? I don't believe that. Lubrilla says, what is your favorite food? I live in the Philippines. The Big Mac from McDonald's. Thrift and Things says, doctor said I have herpes. What should I do, Don? Any advice? My advice is to follow his advice, the doctor. Username says, are you a top or a bottom? I don't want to think about that. 3D says, if you could pick one superpower, what would you pick? Teleportation. Not Very Lean says, Don, can you help me study for the prostate exam? What would that look like? It probably would look unbearably gross. Luke says, fly is my guess. What? Oliver says, don't listen to these jerks. I mean, I'll listen to them, I'll read their comments, but I don't mind the crazy comments. It doesn't get to me. Furious says, you reading chat, me watching you, eyes emoji. Okay. Lala Loopsy says, is it veiny? Veiny? Is my penis veiny? I mean, no comment. Lubrilla says, what percentage is your IQ? Percentage? Well, I haven't done an IQ test. Ludog says, I'm genuinely starting to figure out how the algorithm has you mixed in a bunch of AI news shorts, lol. I mean, for whatever reason, live streams in this vertical format, they're really, there's so many just, never mind. Chiptree says, Don, what's the first thing you're doing if WHO announces a zombie apocalypse? Collect food. Thrift and Thing says, I am shooting reddish brownish spunk. Should I consult a doctor? Yes. Michael says, do you know the mark of Cain? Is that the mark of the beast? Michael Scott says, fucking smile. I think I just did I? Is that valid to you? Ludog says, but it's similar in topic or a related topic. I mean, when I scroll through, it just seems like a random bunch of stuff. But maybe there is, maybe you're right. Amelia says, can you say 6'7" or tung sahur? It's mandatory to be a YouTuber nowadays. It's mandatory to say that? Well, I just said it in reading your comment. Murao says, do you support any religion? I mean, I'm not religious, but I enjoy reading religious books. 3D says, how much is enough to convince you to rob a bank? No, I don't want to go to prison. Mr. Pallid says, I pooped. Poop emoji, heart emoji, the pants emoji. Sorry. You seem happy about it though, so that's kind of weird. Jason says, do you have Asperger's? I'm not autistic. Aaron says, no. No what? Ruben says, if you could know the day of your death, would you want to know? Yeah, I think that would make me more motivated in life. Thrift says, if you went to prison, Would you be someone's jail wife or jail husband? I don't know. I hope not. SM says, what's your favorite chess opening? I usually move one of my middle pawns 2 spaces forward. I don't play chess that often. Jen says, your reactions to the questions are savage. I love it. Cool. Vivi says, why you always look like you're smelling like shit? I don't know why you think that. Spack Potato says, Epstein didn't kill himself. Okay. The Big Paw says, Edward, do you also sparkle when sunlight hits you? Why do people keep on calling me Edward? I don't look like him. Alan says, you're one of the places in the world? Are you asking what place would I visit? Well, I'm interested in seeing the Apollo statue at Vatican City. Lala says, do you know martial arts? No, I wish I did. Celt says Spanish. Ben Shapiro. I don't think so. He talks so much faster. Clueless says, do you think using AI tools affect your critical thinking? Yes. Not Very Lean says, what was your favorite subject in school? History. And especially history because I had a teacher who forced you to talk and raise your hand, otherwise your grades would go bad. And having to come up with opinions and, argue with people, that was fun. 100 says, would you rather sit on a cucumber or live in a reality where Eyes Wide Shut never existed? I mean, yeah, I'd sit on a cucumber. I just, make sure to make it horizontal, wear pants. Alan says, what one thing that you would forbid in the world, make it like illegal everywhere? I'm not sure. King Julian says, my anus is throbbing. What will soothe my anus? No comment. Optimus Prime says, hello. Hello. Chiptree says, Don, were you a goated debater in your history class? No. But I was a debater. Kelt says, do you play Minecraft? Yes. Jason says, can you do the crypt dance? No. Username says, Don, jork it a little. I'm not masturbating on stream. Sophia says, what do you think of gay people? Good for them. Happy for them. Ernest says, why are you blue-pilled? Because no comment. Jonathan says, I'd tongue punch your fart box. Ew. Your average racer says, say Anushka, please. There you go. Jason says, are you a college student? Possibly. Thrift says, I'm sleepy, Don. Can you come tuck me in and give me a kiss on the forehead? No. Anakin says, do you like Eminem? somewhat. Grimsel says, are you the son of David Das Malakian? Why do you say that? Do I act like him? 3D says, do you like M&Ms? No. Afset says, do you enjoy being a Matrix NPC? Yes. Misty says, you said I was? What? Username says, what did you do between 1939 and 1945? That's not an interesting question to be asked to me. Like, I obviously wasn't born then. But, you know, of course that's a good question for the minions. Simon says, did you try to fiddle your sister? I'm not incestual. Jekin says, do you remember your past life? I don't believe in past lives, and I don't. Stu says, prefer shaved or bush? No comment. Thrift says, Don, were you a master debater in high school? I was waiting for someone to say that. Ernest says, did you dress up as a spunk bucket for Halloween? No, gross. Your local icon says, do you remember me? No, sorry. Dale says, shout out to my neighbor, please? No. Nate says, this guy is very unsettling. Okay. Ark says, do you take a shit while standing up? No, that sounds like a terrible idea. Unknown says, I am a porn addict. Please help me. I think the new drug organization might have some, like, useful information on how to combat that. The new drug. Aaron says, I'm vibing on your hair. Thanks. 100 says, keep going, Donnie. I'm almost there. Okay. Clueless says, how would you advise people to use AI tools? I mean, not to, you know, to use as a shortcut to get good grades in high school. That it's important that you put effort into the work, because, you know, the effort is like a lot of what matters, not actually what you're learning. 3D says, what kind of beer do you drink? No comment. Dale says, I'm cheesing on the inside. Okay. Thrift says, can I be your doctor during a rectal examination? No, I don't trust you with the things that you've said. Kelt says, he's cute, but 5'7"? Just kidding. Okay. Alan says, can you rap or sing for the chat? No. Don says, the effort connects the neurons in the brain. Yeah. Jason says, Don, read Science Set Free by Rupert Sheldrake before 2026. Probably not. Vaish says, what's your favorite role? Phil my Kraken. Okay. King says, what would it take you for you to turkey slap a chicken in the head? Just a slap? Maybe I would do it for like thousands of dollars, but yeah, maybe. If I read that right, I'm not, maybe you mean something by that. 3D says there are at least 50 active serial killers in the US. Wow, that's crazy. Yoshi says, you've been streaming for so long today. Yeah, I've been streaming a lot today. Chiptree says, call PETA. Okay. Misty says, will you answer me? Can I see you? What? Your average racer says, do you remember me? I come every day. I remember your name. Dylan says, are you slow? Maybe. Roach says, you have crazy eyes like a madman. Okay. Kelt says, Don missed his calling to be a school shooter. I never had those thoughts. Kelt says, don't block me, bro. I haven't blocked anyone ever. Daria says, I have no idea who he is. Okay. Alan says, I can't seem to quit the stream. You can't quit the stream? You're like addicted? Okay. Bubba says, why are you so cool? I don't know. MLG says, if you don't believe in God is real, then I will. What? ISJ says, I quit earlier and scrolling brought me back. You stopped watching the stream and then you started scrolling later and you found me again? Okay. Dylan says, what's your skincare routine for your butt cheeks? I don't have one. Apes says, tell me to choke my chicken Don. I will. Don't masturbate. Don't. Jason says, have you ever seen a UFO? Parentheses, UAP, parentheses. Have I seen a, what I think to be an alien in the sky? No. Beauty says, hi. Hello, Beauty. Thrift says, I swear I won't do anything but examine your anus for any damage. I'm good. I don't want you to examine my anus. King says, do you know when E.T. is phoning back home? No. Spamano says, did you find Bigfoot in GTA San Andreas? No, but I have in Red Dead Undead Nightmare. Rado says, what's your opinion on Tuvalu? Looks like a small, boring country. Drew says, have you ever played Chivalry 2? No. Username says, how are you not laughing? Maybe I'm desensitized. That might be a factor. Modicon says, why Elon Musk looks Asian? I don't know. Dylan says, homie lives in slow motion mode. Yeah, and it's relaxing. It's not stressful living in slow motion mode. Mexican American Vlogs says, so if you don't beat the chicken silly, then you must get blue balls a lot. I guess so. Zach says, are you liberal? Possibly. I am woke. I'm not based like a groper. Kezia says, hello, I'm here to say to you, Always keep smiling and never give up. Thank you. Thrift says, what should I do if my neighbor more than it should? What? Alan says, who is your favorite scientist? I don't know, Nikola Tesla. Drew says, are you part of the Illuminati? I wish. Jay says, strangled any hookers lately? No. Kelt says, spontaneous nocturnal emissions. Is it okay? Dylan says, what should I do if my neighbor votes for Democrats? Accept them. Shannon says, you don't like food from morning to now? Eat something, please. I am hungry right now. I will eat something soon. Fate says, hey. Hello, Fate. The Synth Wizard says, what should I draw? Something biblical. Bad says, you look like a stand user. I don't know what that means. PK says, hey neighbor, you're not Megamind, are you? No, I'm not blue. Ernest says, are you on FBI's watch list? No. Ainsley says, are you Tom Holland? No. Woodda says, are you happy? Genuinely. Yeah. Tani says, go for a walk today when the sun starts. Take a deep breath and be grateful. Thank you for your suggestion. Thrift says, would you be a guinea pig for this new anus medication I created? No. I really don't trust you. Donald says, what is your favorite Bible verse? Matthew 5:28. It goes something like, if you lust with a person in your head, then that's actually adultery still, even though it's in the head. Woodda says, smile. I will eventually. Username says, what should I do if my neighbor grows more than it should? You're saying the same thing as Thrift? Okay. Simu says, hello, where did you get your shirt from? Sal C1 on YouTube. Sal C1. Mexican says, nice face. I shall name you Sugar Cookie. I don't like that name, but go ahead. Drew says, bro's a lizard. I'm not. Jacqueline says, your memory is very good. Thank you. King Julian says, I just blasted a load into a bottle of mayonnaise. That's pretty weird. Okay. But Doogie says, you look like you have multiple sets of eyelids. Like a alligator. Huh. That's weird. Thrift says, I'm obsessed with Uranus, not your anus. Okay. Felix says, hey, yeah. Hello, Felix. Zach says, do you eat reptiles? Thinking emoji. I don't. Is there a reptile that tastes good? Sailing says, stay strong, brother. Haters gonna hate. Yeah, I mean, I think haters add, like, value to a stream. Like, it makes things more interesting, in my opinion. Miss Tessa says, just came across your live stream. You are awesome. Thank you. Space Invader says, alligator jerky. Is that a real thing people eat? Thrift says, I just blew a load thinking about the new medication I created. Wow, you're really excited about this creation of yours. Coat says, this guy needs his own show. I have one. I eat toilet paper says, I eat toilet paper. That was cool. Badoogie says, do you do this for the love of the game? Yeah, but I also hope to have money, like get money from doing this, which is a bit messed up of me, but it's the truth. It's the truth. Tom King says, are you on the spectrum? No. K-pop says, sing Golden. Your name's K-pop, so I'm guessing Golden is a K-pop song. I don't sing at all. Werner says, ever smoked weed? No. IS says, you might want to switch it. Switch what? Username says, are you a communist or a National Socialist Party member? Neither. OG says, this guy's interesting. I watched him yesterday. What is your profession? I'm gonna keep that private. Jason says, do you live with your parents? Am I one of your parents? You're not one of my parents. Thrift says, can you come to my basement to try out the medication? No. Lauren says, hi. Hearts emoji. Hello, Lauren. 3D says, you seem like a bank teller. Okay. Ernest says, are you in the Goon Olympics? No, and that's not real. Smoke says, will people stop using toilets? I don't think so. I think always people will use toilets. Leon says, how are you doing? Good, thank you. Smoothie says, do you like lychee? What's that? King says, where can I find a jar of pickled foreskin? A serial killer's basement. Live chat says, ladies, calm down, please. Okay. I eat toilet paper says, I also eat plastic. Plastic. Okay. Fly says, what is your favorite Halloween candy? Twizzlers. Kelt says, isn't lech milk? It is. Okay. Woodda says, how are we feeling about crumbs in the bed? Not good. That's annoying when that happens. Spinner says, your breath smells? You wouldn't know that. Ernest says, do you use Punk as your daily face moisturizer? Punk, like a slacker? Do you mean spunk? No. Jacqueline says lychee is a fruit. Lychee is a fruit. I haven't heard of it. Samuel says, can you tell us a joke? No, that means I have to use my brain. I love how answering questions is so easy, and I'm being serious right now. 3D says red or black Twizzlers. I haven't given black Twizzlers a try. The Cougar says literally all you do is read your comments out loud. It's 90% of what I do. Jester says, would you eat a scorpion? Not for fun, but if someone paid me. Love says, do you like hard or soft tacos? Soft. Woulda says, thrift. I'll try the anal cream. Where are you located? It looks like you got a guinea pig, thrift. Drew says the NPC tone keeping us all hooked. That's ironic. I would think an NPC tone would make people really bored. Yoshi says blink twice if you need help. I'm fine, Yoshi. Jig says, Jamie, what the fuck, dude? I didn't know you started a YouTube after you hurt your back at work. You got the wrong guy. I'm not Jamie. You don't want to know says, what is pi? Well, it starts with 3.14 and it's the something to do with circles. I says, have you ever rode a dirt bike or ATV? I've ridden an ATV once. Grasshopper says, I took my dog's virginity twice. All I have to say is bestiality is horrible. Don't do that. Banana says, are you okay? Yes, I am. Mikey says, what type of Asian are you? I'm not Asian. Smoke says, what is the meaning of human existence? There's no identifiable meaning. 3D says, when is the last time you went to the beach? It's been a while. Coach says he's Caucasian. Okay. Woulda says thrift. Where is your family clinic? I'm in AZ. Okay. The Jones says jammy. What? I eat toilet paper says, do you eat crab legs? Because if you take the insides out and eat it, that's the nice par. I know it sounds very disgusting, but once you try it, it's nice. I haven't tried that. Thanks for the recommendation. You don't want to know says, what protects Earth from the sun? Is it some kind of layer on the Earth? I forgot what it's called. Jason says, will you try Thrift's medication in exchange for a case of beer? No, that sounds like a terrible idea. A terrible deal. Louis says ozone. It's the ozone layer that protects us from the sun. Okay. Kyvik says, you vegan. Are you vegan, my little princess? I'm not. Ditto says, differentiate sign with respect to y. I wouldn't know how to. If you gave me like a problem, I wouldn't know. I forgot. Thrift says, have you ever mixed spunk with ice water? It's a good mix. No, I don't ever want to try spunk. Quentin says, Dawn, I found you again. Hello, Quentin. Kai says, did you go to college? Possibly. Username says, will you try Thrift's medicine for $2 and a chocolate? That's just a bad. That deal is just as bad. Drew says, have you taken the COVID vaccines? No. I should have. Ark says avocado emoji. Okay. Hot Wheel says lift some weights. Maybe in the future. 3D says platypuses have no stomachs. Their esophagus connects straight to their intestines. Interesting. You don't want to know says, what happens when you mix vinegar and baking soda? I don't know. Kelt says, should have. You're alive. You did just fine. I should have. Thrift says, have you ever had smegma infused Gave cream? It really rejuvenates your skin. I haven't. Mikael says, what did one nut say to the other? What? Mr. Ash says, fuck you, you aren't replying. Sorry. Julian says, don't you hate it when you're taking a fat shit and the water splashes up and soaks your balls in the toilet? Okay. Mikael says, let's lose this guy and get out of here. I don't really get it. Ark says, my cat just died. Mind if I took a shit on the grave so the cat stays alive? Why would you do that? But Doogie says, can you answer the next question with I love that very much? No, I don't. No. Username says, can a cause exist without time? Can a cause exist without time? I really have no idea what the world would be like without time. Dawn says, I like heavier women because they also give me a workout for my arms. Okay. Red Death says, what's your favorite color? Not red, it's gray. Jason says, is it more fun to read the dirty comments? No. Simon says, have you done a Manhattan transfer? What's that? The voice of true purity says, Asians are inferior. Okay, I condemn what you said. You don't want to know says, how to stop climate change. Just something? What do you mean, just something? Drew says, do you gamble? No. Big Gummy says, what's going on? I'm reading whatever messages I get. CS says, Ayn Rand's favorite color was scissors. Are you saying she was homosexual? Mikhail says, do you like Spam? Mm, the food? No. I'm gonna end the stream now. Bye.